Welcome, Rabbi. Can you hear? Okay.
What's the sounding on there? Good morning.
Good evening.
Yeah. Morning, Yisrael. I see my cousin. Morning, Yisrael.
Yeah, Israel, correct.
I'll be back in 1 second. I'll be right back. I'm here.
Yes, we're just waiting for a few more people to join.
The Rebbe's image in front of his eyes. Oh, we're in Mashiach, he sighed. 3 times a day we would have the great books. The Nasi would come diving with us. How can I live when Shabbos goes by without a farang and he cries? Rebbe, oh Rebbe, we need Hashem, Hashem, Terafon. First and on these colors can be ready.
Welcome.
Your children are yearning to be. How can these colors continue? Bring the deal of fulfilling your vow to bring Mashiach right now. With the Tehillim be said through the night. On the
Melech.
the Rebbe's image in front of his eyes. Oh, in Mashiach, 3 times a day we have the great books. The Nasi would come diving with us. How can I live when Shabbos goes by without a farang and he cries? Rebbe, oh Rebbe, we need Hashem, Hashem.
Hello.
These colors can be rainbow. Why don't you open the door? Your children are yearning to be. How long can these colors continue? Bring the deal of fulfilling your
Come on, guys, start.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Rabbi Paltiel. Very early in the morning for him. Before we get into a few details, I would like to thank a few people who made this possible, and also this entire project of 7 weeks of learning the Rebbe's Tichas, the Rebbe's Ma'amorim, as a Hachono for Gimel Tammuz, as the Rebbe clearly said, that the truest kashrus, true connection to me, is through learning my Ma'amorim. And there's no doubt about it that we have gained immensely, and we have caused a great nachas ruach, the Rebbe. Now, I would like to thank Moshe Amzelak, Avremi Joseph, Moti Rabin from Young Yeshiva, Melbourne, Benny Amzelak, and Henry Kingsinger. Tonight's event is partly sponsored by an anonymous donor in honor of our kashrus to the Rebbe, as well as by the Joseph family in memory of Moshe Shol and Libarachel Sandi and Aaron Baruch Joseph. Tonight's speaker probably doesn't really need an introduction, but certainly deserves an introduction. Rabbi Paltiel is the co-founder of Inside Judaism. He's an extremely popular teacher and mentor with an incredible gift for communicating Yiddishkeit.
Aaron, we can't hear you.
Paltiel, maybe just you start and we'll continue afterwards.
Okay, hello, good morning. Let me know if you can hear me. Because if you can't hear me, we got a bit of a problem. Shalom Aleichem to everybody.
Loud and clear.
It is, okay, Baruch Hashem. It's 6:30, Baruch Hashem. It's 6:30 in the morning in New York. 6:34 to be exact. And I just want to announce that the name of my website currently is Inside Hasidus, not Inside Judaism. Okay, the reason I'm clarifying that is because I'm a compulsive pursuit of new followers, new listeners. So you got to know where to find me. Inside Hasidus.org, please. The name changed. It's not your mistake. The name changed, evolved, as it were. Okay, Rabbi Sai, this is a ongoing shir. I'm sort of figuring it out as I'm listening to you talk, which I guess is a little bit late. And each Maggid shir, each person who has an opportunity to present, I guess on some level gets to choose what it is that they're going to discuss. For me, in preparation for Gimel Tammuz, it's a no-brainer. It's the thing to do is to learn the Ma'ameh V'ata Tetzava. I believe that a very large percentage of Anash, maybe all of Anash, in the weeks and days leading up to Gimel Tammuz will engage in learning this Maimed. Because this Maimed is, I don't know how to say it. There is no solution to Gimel Tammuz, okay? There is no solution to Gimel Tammuz. This Maimed is the Maimed for Gimel Tammuz. I guess that's the only way I can say it. Just like the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimed Basi Lagani is the Maimed for Yud Shvat, this Maimed Ve'ata Tezava is the Maimed for Gimel Tammuz. So over the years, I've taught this Maimed many, many times. If you're a frequenter of my website, you know that there's like a half a dozen different versions of the Maimed available. We have approximately an hour. I think that's what we have, an hour. And I sent you a list of 12 points. I'm not going to say this is the perfect list. I have other lists of points of this Maimed that are longer, but I don't think we'll cover a longer list than 12 points. If we get through these 12 points, I'll be delighted. So I sent you these 12 points as, so to speak, as the framework, as the foundation, as the grid of the conversation that we're going to have. So that's what we're going to do. It's 5 days to Gimel Tammuz. I guess for you it's 4 days. And we're going to use the time that we have together to review at least part of this incredibly important Maimed. Now, I guess I'll give you the background. The background will be that the Maimed Basi Lagani, which the Rebbe, our Rebbe, referred to as the Maimed of Hilula, that means the Maimed connected to Yud Shvat, was officially not made or written for that occasion. The Maimed of Yud Shvat was prepared and published, presumably, allegedly, on the surface for the Frierdiker Rebbe's grandmother's yahrzeit. Yud Shvat is the grandmother, the yahrzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe's grandmother. Her name was Rebbe Tzedivka. Yud Gimel Shvat was the yahrzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe's mother. And Beis Nissen was the yahrzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe's father. And the Maimed Basi Lagani was meant to be learned on 4 occasions. The first was the yahrzeit of his grandmother. The second was the yahrzeit of his mother. The third was Purim. And the last was the yahrzeit of his father. Then, of course, the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away. As soon as the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, the Rebbe, our Rebbe, began to refer to this Maimed, quote, the Maimed von Hilula, the Maimed associated with the Stalkers of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he explained that in general, everything that happens in the world is b'hashgacha pratis. Certainly, things that happen in the life of a Rebbe are b'hashgacha pratis. Moreover, what happens in the life of a Rebbe is b'hashgacha Rebbe, right? And the Rebbe used to bring the Gemara that says that although the Chazal say that they don't tell a person either his money, no one is told when his time. The Rebbe said the fact of the matter is, however you explain it, everything that happens in the life of a Rebbe is with his full knowledge, and everything that happens in the life of a Rebbe is with his full acquiescence, his full approval. And therefore, the Rebbe said the Frierdiker Rebbe knew when he gave out the Yud Shvat, the Basi Lagani, officially for another purpose, that it would end up being the Maimed of Hilula. And the Maimed Ve'ata Tezava is similar. The Maimed was given out exactly 2 weeks prior to the stroke, and officially it was given out for Purim Katan. A few of the unusual characteristics of the way this Maimed was distributed was the Maimed was given to us in a plastic bag, like a hard, clear plastic bag that nailed the Maimed, $2, and a piece of lekach, which was, of course, not normal. You don't usually give a lekach Purim Katan. The Rebbe used to give lekach either at Yom Kippur or Shana Rabbah. In 1992, in Tafshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe gave out lekach on 4 different occasions. On 4 different occasions, the Rebbe gave a kuntris, and along with the kuntris came a piece of lekach. When the Rebbe gave the Maimed Ve'ata Tezava, the Maimed came along with a piece of lekach. And of course, the Rebbe explained it. Lekach has to do with Torah. But it's very obvious that this was unusual. The Rebbe was giving out a Maimed this with a piece of physical cake that we can actually consume. In addition, and this is very unusual, it was very obvious that the Rebbe was desperately interested in giving it to as many people as possible. The Rebbe finished giving out the kuntris, and he started leaving. He walked out of the shul. And usually, if you never started leaving the shul and you ran in and you hadn't gotten your copy yet, you missed, Avaz Mani Bata Kapani, your chance was passed. You would have to go to the Rebbe's secretaries and they would give you a kuntres. The Rebbe stopped in the middle of shul, and he started handing out more kuntresim. And of course, as the Rebbe started handing out more kuntresim, more nemushes, more last minuters ran in and they lined up. The Rebbe gave out a whole bunch. The Rebbe continued walking, walked to the back of the shul, and another person who hadn't yet gotten the kuntres walked in. The Rebbe stopped the second time, gave out some more, went back upstairs into the hall where he would normally distribute dollars, and that scene repeated itself a third time. It was clear that it was very, very important to the Rebbe to give this maimed to as many people as possible. Of course, as events would play out over the next 2 years and some months, this would become the maimed that Rebbe gave us most recently. And as a result, people look to this maimed for inspiration, for direction, for clarity about the Chassid Rebbe relationship, as it were. So here there's a little bit of a thought that can be sort of applied to it. And that is that the Maimed Basi Lagani is a special Maimed. Everybody knows the Maimed Basi Lagani is a special Maimed. But I would argue the Maimed Basi Lagani is a special Maimed because the Rebbe pointed out how special it is. Had the Rebbe not pointed it out, I don't think we would find it on our own. The Maimed Va'ata Tetzaveh needs no explaining. It speaks for itself. The Maimed Basi Lagani and the unique form or design of the Maimed, nature of the Maimed, I don't know what word you want to use, is self-explanatory. It's so clear and obvious that this is different. It's very, very clear now. This is a different kind of Maimed. And if you just read it and you pay attention to what the Maimed says, you immediately understand that this is a most unusual Maimed. It's a very, very unusual Maimed. And of course, most importantly, it's timely. It's for us. It's for now. It's here. It's today. And this is what Chassidim do Gimel Tammuz. This is what Chassidim do Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz, Koch Mazach, and V'ata Tetzaveh. I mean, there's so much else that goes on, of course. But in terms of Limud, in terms of the Rebbe's Torah, and how we identify something in the Rebbe's Torah that talks to us on this occasion, in my opinion at least, there's no doubt that this is the thing to do, to learn the Maimer V'ata Tetzaveh. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to learn about the Tetzaveh. And on your piece of paper, which I sent you, you have 12 points. Okay, like I said, it's not a perfect list. I'm not going to call it an arbitrary list, but I'm not going to call it a perfect list. So I'm going to proceed. Now, I don't know what the program is about people asking questions or making interruptions. So again, without knowing protocol, I'm going to keep talking until somebody interrupts me.
Just another
The
question.
Maimed is the first pasuk in Parshas Tetzaveh. Right?
All the questions will be at the end, just so you understand.
You have to speak clearly.
All the questions will be at the end.
Pardon me?
All the questions are going to be at the end.
Oh, good. Perfect. Thank you for saying that. And by the way, for some reason, I'm getting a very electronic sound, which is hard to listen to. So some of that has to be resolved also. Okay, the Maimed is the first circle of Parshas because they Maimed it out in Parshas Tetzaveh. But there's something extraordinarily distinct about Parshas Tetzaveh, which of course ties into this, which is the fact that in Parshas Tetzaveh, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned. In Parshas Tetzaveh, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned even once. And of course, we all know the reason why. Because at least as they state the right, this is the reason that we were educated, so our teachers taught us that Moshe Rabbeinu had set up this baruch that Hashem should forgive the Jewish people for the Egel Azov, for the sin of the golden calf. Otherwise, that Hashem should take Moshe Rabbeinu's name out of the Sefer Torah. And Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I will remove from my book the sinners, not you. And of course, Hashem did forgive the Jewish people, and the history as it unfolded, we know to some extent at least. In other words, Hashem did not put Moshe in a position where this request needed to be honored. Nevertheless, it's for him that when a tzaddik makes a bakasha, a filu al tnai iserosh, when a tzaddik on the caliber of Moshe Rabbeinu makes a request of HaKadosh Baruch, even though he makes it cannily, the request has to be met at least in part, even if the condition isn't met. Meaning to say, even though Moshe Rabbeinu said on the condition that Hashem will not forgive the Jewish people, and in reality, Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem did forgive the Jewish people. Nevertheless, the Mechenina left a mark that from one pasha, the Torah, from one seder in the Chumash, beginning with Pashas Shmoi till the end, Moshe Rabbeinu's name was deleted, and that's in Pashas Tetzaveh. And the question is, you have, I don't know what it's, 21 Pashas, Shmois and V'zei Sabracha, or 22 Pashas, I don't know the number exactly. Why Tetzaveh? Why of all the Pashas in the Torah where Moshe Rabbeinu's name could appear, Moshe Rabbeinu's name doesn't appear, happens to be the Pashas Tetzaveh. So there's a wonderful vetel, I don't know the source of it, but it's really wonderful, it's simple speech, that says that Hashem decides to erase Moshe Rabbeinu's name from one Pasha, and he's holding in the middle of Pashas Kisisa, right? The story of the Egel is next Pashas Kisisa. So Koyachal Hashem says, should I take Moshe's name out of Pashas Kisisa? He says, nah, let's leave his name. What just happened? Something just happened that I am not aware of. We good?
Yeah, we're all good, all good.
It says host has stopped your video. I should ignore that. So I guess I shall. Yes?
Yeah, you're all good to continue, all good.
Okay. So the Eibishter Klayachol says, I would remove his name from Pashas. Now let's wait till next week. So Moshe Rabbeinu's name is in Pashas Kisisa. Comes to Vayakel, Koyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, I got to take Moshe Rabbeinu's name out of Pasha. Maybe it'll leave Vayakel. And of course, Hashem is quite reluctant to do that. He says, let's wait till next week. So they go to Pekudei. Comes Pekudei, and the same thing repeats itself. Go through the entire Torah until you get to the last chance, the last opportunity to erase Moshe Rabbeinu's name from a Pasha is Tetzaveh, because it's right before Kisisa. So if in Kisisa, Moshe Rabbeinu says Mechenina, and each week Hashem delays it, when you get to Tetzaveh, the following reading, there's simply no place to go, and Moshe Rabbeinu's name has to be removed from one Pasha, so it becomes Tetzaveh. This is how I like it, because it speaks to how much love HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for Moshe Rabbeinu. But in Likutei Sichos, the Rebbe says something different. There's a Sicha from the Rebbe. Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in Pashas Tetzaveh, and it's quite poignant, and it's contextually sobering. It's very moving, and that is because Pashas Tetzaveh always occurs around Zayin Nodar, and Zayin Nodar has to do with the Petita, with the status of Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not in Pashas Tetzaveh, not for the reason of Mechenina, because it has to do with Moshe Rabbeinu's Petita. Moshe Rabbeinu says, moreover, when there are two others, Pashas Tetzaveh will always appear around Zayin Nodar in the first, which is when we engage in the Yanam of our. So Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned in Pashas Tetzaveh because it's associated with the Petita, with the stalkos of Moshe Rabbeinu. But then the Rebbe explains that it cannot be understood superficially. Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in Pashas Tetzaveh because Kvayochel. Moshe Rabbeinu is Nehedar. Moshe Rabbeinu is, in Yiddish, they used to use an expression in the olden sensitive days. Gefelt, lacking, his space is empty. So his name does not appear in the Chumash, his physical space is empty. Says the Rebbe, that's not the full story either. The full story is, we know, the Rebbe from Tanya and all kinds of other sources, that the name of the person goes to the very core. The name of a person goes to his very essence, goes to his very, very core. That's why when it's changed, you call him by a name that, according to Hasidus Kabbalah, the name of the person is the highest of the person, and on and on. Yeah. However, we also know that the neshama in Gan Eden doesn't have a name, and the proof of this is that if a neshama will appear in several gilgulim, if a neshama will come back several times over and over in a variety of different gilgulim, it won't necessarily have the same name. Even Moshe Rabbeinu himself, in certain Sfarim, it's brought that Moshe Rabbeinu is the Gilgal of Sheis, or of Hevel, or of Iyeh. Shem Yochai is the Gilgal of Moshe Rabbeinu, and so on. There are quite a few neshamas that are attributed to being the same neshama as Moshe Rabbeinu. They don't have the same name. So it's clear that the name of the person, as deep, as close to the essence, is that the name is to have to do with that particular Gilgal, with that particular manifestation of the neshama in the guf. Because the neshama by itself is above a name. Says the Rebbe, the idea that in Parashat Tetzaveh Moshe Rabbeinu's name does not appear is because Moshe Rabbeinu was raised above the Madrege where he's called Moshe. In other words, Parashat Tetzaveh's lack of Moshe's name is not because of the Hera, because of the felon, the physical lack of the presence of Moshe Rabbeinu, but because he stands on a level where he's higher than a name. Or said in different words, it's said on a level where Moshe Rabbeinu and all the Rabbeinu Nesiim that are going to come after him, that are of course, is Pashtusa de Moshe, B'chol Dara V'Dara, and Ein Dosh, Ein Beit Moshe, and all the other expressions are one. So the idea that in Parashat Tetzaveh, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned is because we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu on that Madrege, on that level, where Moshe is one with the Moshe Rabbeinu of every single generation. And that's the pasuk that is the foundation of this minor. I guess it speaks for itself. So, so the psukim at the beginning of Parashat Tetzaveh, where Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned, have a direct relationship with the inyan of a Rebbe, of all Rebbes, of a Rebbe of every single generation, the way, so to speak, they stand as one. L'maylo minyan hashem, that altogether above the idea of having a specific or a distinct name. That's the context of the Maimer. Now, the Maimer itself, of course, begins with the pasuk. I'm going to read item A, Aleph, on your sheet, Va'ata Tetsaveh B'nei Yisrael, and you should command, and then I wrote in bracket, connect the B'nei Yisrael. This pasuk is the pasuk in Chumash that comes along with a question. It comes along with a question, with several questions. But the most important question that it comes along with is the following. The first two psukim of Parashat Tetzaveh appear almost verbatim, almost word for word in Parashat Emor. In Parashat Emor, near the end of the Parasha, you have, and then it says, and then the same exact words that we have in our Parasha. I think I may not be quoting it entirely precisely, but that's more or less the same. So they have the same words in the Chumash two times, once in the beginning of Parashat Tetzaveh, and the second time at the beginning of Parashat Emor. So Rashi in Emor, the second time it appears, asks the obvious question: why would the Torah repeat the very same idea twice? The Torah does not have to repeat things unless there's a very distinctive, very specific reason why. Here we have two psukim repeated almost verbatim on two different occasions in the Torah, and the question is why the redundancy, why the repetition? And Rashi gives a pshat answer. Rashi gives an answer for koyachal ben chomish lemikra, for a 5-year-old. What Rashi says is that the mitzvah of preparing oil for the menorah is in Parashat Emor. It's the second time it's listed, it's brought. The first two psukim of Parashat Tetzaveh, V'ata Tetzaveh B'nei Yisrael, and so forth, are not talking about the mitzvah of Shem. They're not telling us how to prepare oil for the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. They're simply telling us what's going to happen later. They're simply telling us why Shem and Lamor was included in the Tezvav Dvar, the 15 things that we used when the Beis HaMikdash was built. In other words, Rashi says that the first two psukim of Parashat Tetzaveh are giving no practical instruction. They're simply informing us of a practical instruction that's going to be said later, which is in Parashat Emor. That's what Rashi said. And of course, on a level of Pshuta Shel Mikra, that's a very sufficient tenet, because the Torah has a habit of doing that, sometimes telling you something up front and saying, we'll get back to it later. But of course, for those who study Torah, you know that oftentimes there may be the similar questions, but very different answers. Pshat asks questions, Remez asks questions, Seid asks questions, Drush asks questions, Hasidus asks questions. Occasionally they're different, but often they're the same questions, but they give very different answers. Hasidus is asking the same question Rashi is asking. Why does the Torah on two different occasions say exactly the same thing? That Moshe Rabbeinu should tell the Jewish people, here oil and bring it to Moshe Rabbeinu to be used for the menorah. Why is it once in Pashas Tetzava and the second time Pashas Tetzava? But Hasidus gives a very, very different answer, a completely different answer, an altogether different answer. Hasidus' answer is that in Pashas Tetzava, we're being told how to prepare shemen for the menorah. Moshe Rabbeinu is passing along a message from the Creator Almighty, and the Jewish people share for the menorah. In Pashas Tetzava, our Pasha, on which our Maimon is based, Moshe Rabbeinu is not giving us any message at all. V'ata Tetzava as Bnei Yisrael is not Hashem telling Moshe Rabbeinu what to tell us, but rather it's Hashem telling Moshe Rabbeinu what Moshe Rabbeinu's shlichus is, what Moshe Rabbeinu's task is, what Moshe Rabbeinu's role is, what his function is. In other words, when you study the Torah, you have sections of the Torah that speak to all the Jewish people in the world. Then you have sections of the Torah that speak to a segment of people, Kohanim, Leviim. Then you have the section that speaks to an individual. There's the Pasha of a Melech, the Pasha of a Kohen Gadol. Yeah? Where in the Torah are the laws of Rebbe? Where in the Torah does the Torah describe the role of a tzaddik, of what the Rebbe calls in Tanya Roshi Alpha Yisra, a Nasi Yisra? You know, the Hebrew word Nasi is an abbreviation of Nitutze Shel Yain Avinu, which then includes all the Jewish people. And the word Rebbe is Rosh Bnei Yisrael. Where in Hashem's Torah are the direct instructions to a Rebbe as to what is his role? And the answer is the first psukim in Pashas Vata Tetzava. V'ata Tetzava as Bnei Yisrael doesn't mean you should command. It doesn't mean that Moshe Rabbeinu is acting as a medium or as an intermediary to communicate to the people the will of God. It's an instruction to Moshe Rabbeinu. V'ata Tetzava, your role, your purpose, the reason your neshama came into this world was, quote, lekasher ulechaber es Yisrael lemeritav, to connect the Jewish people to the Ein Sof. And that's how Pashas Tetzava begins. The Parsha where Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned, because it's referring to Moshe Rabbeinu on the Madrege, which is higher than a name, which he, in quote, shares with all the Nesiyei Yisrael, b'chol ha'deiros kulam, every Rebbe, every Moshe Rabbeinu is told by Hashem in the beginning of Pashas V'ata Tetzava that his shlichus, his mandate, his purpose, his definition is Tetzva'ata, that Moshe Rabbeinu, Tetzava's Bnei Yisrael, should connect the Jewish people to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so forth and so on. And that's this Maimer. That is this Maimer. This Maimer, which begins with the Pasuk V'ata Tetzava, is teaching us how Hasidus interprets these two psukim, obviously. And the way Hasidus interprets these two psukim is these two psukim are speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu about what Moshe Rabbeinu must do. Not what Moshe Rabbeinu must tell us to do, but what Moshe Rabbeinu must do. The Pshat, Tetzava, you will do the act of Tetzava es Bnei Yisrael with the Jewish people, and you should know, if you learn the Maimed in its entirety with all the little details, you'll notice that there's two interpretations of those words. One is that you should connect the Jewish people with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is how the Maimed goes for the most part. And then at the very end of the Maimed, Rebbe mentions very briefly V'ata Tetzava as Bnei Yisrael, that the inyan of Moshe Rabbeinu is to connect the Jewish people with one another. In other words, in addition to V'ata Tetzava means lekasher ulechaber es Yisrael lemeritav, to connect Yidden with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there is also the idea of connecting Yidden with one another, with each other. Okay, so that's the Maimed, really. The spirit of the Maimed is what I just shared. That the inyan of a Rebbe of Nasi Yisrael, of Moshe Rabbeinu, is to connect Yidden with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, Rabbi, I want to give you a little bit of language for this. Okay, you know, people have jobs, people have roles, people complement each other, right? A community of people are not all the same. They're not a monolith. And if they were, it would be really unfortunate. And everybody plays a role. Everybody's supposed to do something different. And if the community is healthy and good, There are no extra pieces. There's no missing pieces. Everybody's role is vital. You need every member of the community. You couldn't do without one, and so on. But we served it, and everybody has a self-definition or a definition given to him by the community, right? And there are leadership roles. One is a Rav, one is a Rosh Yeshiva, one is a Mashpia. And people fill different niches in terms of what their definition is and what their purpose is. A Rebbe has a role. And what distinguishes the role of the Rebbe from the role of most everybody else is that his fundamental definition is that he is an neshama person. He's a yid who's in touch with his own neshama, with his own godliness, and his role is to experience, to relate to every Jew on the neshama level, and to influence them, to be mashpia on them, to affect them from that angle, from that point of view, from that perspective. It's an neshama role. This is what's unique about a Rebbe that separates him even from a great Gaon and Gadol Yisrael, other than a Rebbe, that the definition of a Rebbe is that he has to do with the soul of the Jewish people, with the neshama, with the inner God within each one of us. And his role is to feel it, to touch it, to awaken it, and to direct it. And that's the taitva, ואתה, תצוה. That Moshe Rabbeinu has to help the Jewish people get in touch with their neshama. And by getting in touch with their neshama, they should automatically have a more meaningful, a more actionable relationship with Atzmas Amos, with HaKadosh Baruch. So as the Maimon proceeds, you have entries Beis and Gimel. Okay, Beis and Gimel are two different ways for saying what I just said. Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, "Va'ata tetzav es bnei Yisrael." Moshe Rabbeinu was given the task of connecting Yidden to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the emphasis on the neshama, on the God inside. And there are two different expressions that speak to this. The first is lekashed ulechabed es Yisrael le'mein save, which is translated in English to tie and join the Yidden with the Ein Sof. Moshe Rabbeinu's role is to connect Yidden with the Ein Sof. And the second expression is lozun ulefanis es Yisrael b'inyan ha'emunah, that he must provide mezonos and parnasa. That means food, and parnasa includes everything but food: clothing, shelter, jewelry, makeup. Right? The word mezonos and parnasa for the yeshiva mansion is a ksuba, and the man's obligation to his wife has to provide mezonos and to provide parnasa. This expression lozun or lefanis es Yisrael b'inyan ha'emunah is actually verbatim, word for word, from a Zohar, which our Maimon quotes in the original Aramaic, that the inyan of Moshe Rabbeinu was to provide mezonos and parnasa. That means food and all other provisions for the Jewish people when it comes to the inyan of Emunah. So the Rebbe, of course, explains. The Rebbe explains in his Maimon that we don't need Moshe Rabbeinu for Emunah. We don't need a Rebbe. A Jew does not need a Rebbe in order to have Emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because Emunah is churi meirei shamona. Emunah we inherited from the first believer. The first believer, of course, is Avraham Avinu, and Avraham Avinu was zoicha that all of the descendants after him should have an inherent, an inner connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is not based on the mind, and that it's an intimate connection, which we call basically, Emunah. So you don't need Moshe Rabbeinu to give us Emunah in the wording of the Maimon, because Kol Yisrael Ma'aminim B'nei Ma'aminim, we're all believers, descendants of believers. You don't need a Rebbe to give you Emunah. If you're born a Jew, you have Emunah in the Neshama. So what is the meaning of this statement? Well, that's like I said before, which is actually a Zoya, that Moshe Rabbeinu's role is Lozum, or Lefanis, as Yisrael, Binyan Emunah. And the answer, Rabbi say, is we need a Rebbe to make the faith pnimius, that the Emunah should be revealed. The Emunah should be internalized. And of course, we all know the famous syndrome, which is mentioned in the Gemara in Masechta Brachos. If you grew up in Chabad, you've come across this Gemara on more than one occasion, that the Gemara says, Gan v'apul machtalta rachamona kari, which means literally a thief at the opening to the machteres, at the opening of the tunnel, that he's dug into somebody else's basement to break and enter, to steal. Rachamona kari calls out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, prays to God Almighty that his efforts should be successful. Now understand, the Yid of the Baba Machteres A person who breaks and enters your home, sneaks into your house in the middle of the night, is considered a ganav. He's presumed to be a thief. And he's also considered a potential reteach. Because the Gemara says, if someone breaks and enters, you can assume that he's ready to kill. Which is why the pasuk says, "Ein leidam." If someone enters into your home, you shoot. According to Tanya, you shoot first and you ask questions later, because there's a presumption that he's prepared even to murder the Hachono litzlan. So imagine a yidle who's breaking and entering into somebody's house. So a ganav is for sure, and he's very close to being a reiteach, and he stands by the entrance of this tunnel. And he cries out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he should succeed in his efforts. It's the ultimate hypocrisy. It's you cannot be a greater hypocrite than to ask the Eibishter to help you violate two of the most significant, most cardinal sins in the Jewish way of life, in the Jewish religion, Jewish das ha'emes, as the Rambam calls it. So of course the answer is famous, that emunah is makif. Believing in God means that God is out there. Believing in God so much that you're prepared to do what God advocates you do, that's another story. You're maimin, you believe in Hashem, varaya, you're davening to Him, but you're davening to Him to help you live the life you've chosen, even if that life is incompatible with the will of the person, the entity to whom you're praying. And this is why you need Moshe. You don't need Moshe Rabbeinu to give emunah. You need Moshe Rabbeinu to give the emunah teeth, to give the emunah the power to affect our lives behaviorally. You know, Emmanuel Shachat Alav Shalom used to say, you don't want to be a cardiac Jew. A cardiac Jew means that they call a Jew at heart. Because he's supposed to have, Chazal say, he's supposed to have a rucha b'chol ha'machibrim. The yid has to radiate every part of the person's body. If we concentrate our entire yid on our heart, it's too much pressure. The heart's not designed to carry the whole Torah. The heart is supposed to radiate it to the whole goof. And this is Moshe Rabbeinu's role. Moshe Rabbeinu's role is not that a yid should be a believer. Moshe Rabbeinu's role is that a yid should be such a believer that his life reflects it behaviorally and practically, actually. And that's the meaning of Lozun or the Fanes as Yisrael. Again, the Nigle is a whole discussion unto itself. Why you have both of these expressions, Mizaynes and Panasa, but we don't have the time for this or the know-how for it at the moment. But Moshe Rabbeinu has to affect that the emunah which we have from Avraham Avinu, or the emunah which we have, again, in the language, in the form of the Maimed, in the category of Ma'aminim, B'nei Ma'aminim, gets its mezoines, gets its panasa, gets its power, its ability to translate into life from Moshe Rabbeinu. And in every generation, there's Moshe Rabbeinu, there's a Rebbe Nasi B'Yisrael, and his role, his definition, his function, and his purpose is to see to it that Yidden should live what they believe. They shouldn't just believe it and go back to sleep. They should practically live what they believe. And this is the Inyan from Zon U'Mefanes Es Yisrael B'Inyan Ha'emunah. And of course, this doesn't apply only to the first Moshe Rabbeinu Agashmi, the physical man who went up on the mountain and brought us the Seres Hadibris and the Teilah and the Teresh Bafet and so forth. But it goes on the Espashtus of the Moshe B'chol Dor of a Dor. In every generation, there's a Rebbe, there's a Nasi, there's Moshe Rabbeinu, and they all are the same role. What's the inyan of a tzaddik? What's the inyan of a Rebbe? So I want you to know, and I don't have any svarim here, I'm not at home. One of the unusual aspects of this very early Shia is that I'm not even at home, is that I have no access to svarim. What I'm trying to say is that this statement, L'kasher l'chaber Yisrael l'meidei tzaf, is not just spoken about the first Moshe Rabbeinu, that in every generation there's a Rebbe, the Nasi is a Moshe Rabbeinu, and in each generation his role and his function, his purpose, and his definition is to touch the Yiddish neshama, is to wake up the soul. That's his job. Oh, this is what I wanted to tell you. There's a pidyon nefesh from Baal Shem Tov. Did you know? D-U-I-K. Put this on your list of things to read. Did you know that there is an extant pan, pidyon nefesh, from the Baal Shem Tov himself? There's an original pan. We don't have the original manuscript, but we have a copy of it. An original pan from the Baal Shem Tov himself. The way the pan came to us is because the Baal Shem Tov called him as Ritcher Magid, and who was his disciple, who was his student. And he said to the Ritcher Magid before Rosh Hashanah, everybody gives pidyanis, everyone gives a pan. I also want to give a pan, but I have nobody that I can trust. I'm afraid to give a pan. And then he said to the Magid, I'm not afraid to give you opinion. So the Baal Shem Tov gave the Ritcher Magid a pan. The Ritcher Magid kept that pan, and many years later he gave it as a gift to his favorite Talmud, the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe had this pan, and he tried to send it to his Rebbe, the Mendel Vitebsker. It never arrived in Eretz Yisrael, and it ended up staying in Europe. And b'derech le'derech, it ended up what we assume is in the collection of the Ruzhner Rebbe's Ksavim, and it came out in the Knizah Chesanis. History is a different time, a different place, different group of people, different conversation. But there is an original Pidyon Nefesh in the Baal Shem Tov, and it's fascinating to read. The whole thing is 4 or 5 lines. And if someone really wants to see it, then you can't find it, send me a WhatsApp or an email. I'll try to make a picture of it and I'll send it to you. The Teuchen of the pan is that the Shem Tov writes. They should have, of course, a Ksiva B'Chasima table, the standard nusach that you would write for the new year. And then he writes, She'akasher im Yisrael b'chol mokim shehem. I should connect myself to Jewish people wherever in the world they may be, and schlep them out of whatever schmutz they may be involved with, and bring them back and connect them to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's so simple. A pan of a Rebbe. What's the pan of a Rebbe? Our pidyanis is that we should be more connected to the Eibishter. We should be more connected to the Rebbe Kvayach. The Rebbe's pidyon is that he should be connected to every Jew wherever they are in the world. When there's all the Me'oider Zayin, there's all the Ufek, and he should wake them, and he should inspire them, and so forth. You know, the Rogatchover was a Bal Nigler. The Rogatchover, Rabbi Yosef Rosen of Rogatchover, who passed away in 1936, he was born, I believe, in 1859. Okay, the Rogatchover was, as we know, a legend in his own time. During his lifetime, he was head and shoulders above the Go'odim of his time. He was a most unusual personality. And of course, the Rebbe spoke about him with such respect and reverence. The Rebbe, I suppose we would say, considered him his teacher. The Rogatchover came from a Chabad home. The Rogatchover was not a chassid in the typical sense that he davened arichis, but he was a chassid at his core. He was very loyal to the Alter Rebbe, to Chabad, and he was very connected to the Lubavitcher Rebbeim, to the Rebbe Rashab and the Frierdiker. It's a long, complicated story, which is not for now. But the point is, he had a very, very deep appreciation and respect for the Rebbeim, for the Nisim. He was 21 years older, or 22 years older than the Frierdiker Rebbe. He was much older than the Frierdiker. Frierdiker Rebbe was born, he was probably a married man. Nevertheless, the Rogatchover and the Rebbe Rayatz, the Frierdiker Rebbe, lived in the same city in Leningrad, in Petersburg, for a few years. And the Rogatchover had great respect for the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he was the one, I think, I don't know this, but I suspect, who coined the expression Nasi. You know, in Chabad lexicon, the Rebbe is called a Nasi. The Sideh Reiner, Nasi. The Rogatchover spoke more language of Halacha and Nigla. He wasn't speaking Chassidus and Kabbalah. He was Pasha speaking Lumdis. Everything in Nigla has a Geder, at least according to the Rogatchover. And the Rogatchover was speaking the Geder of a Rebbe. A Rebbe is a Nasi. Nitutza Sheyanka Venu, Reish B'nai Yisrael, and so on and so forth. So the story was that the Rogatchover, who was an incredible genius, not the most patient man on the planet, was visited by the Bachim. The Bachim came to the Frierdiker Rebbe in Leningrad. Now you're talking during the dark early years of Stalin. Russia would become darker, but it was quite dark at that point. And they would travel to the Rebbe in Leningrad. And one of the visits that they had, when they came to Leningrad, one of the stops was to go into the Rogatchover. The Rogatchover didn't have much patience for people. But when the Tmimim would come, the way the story, Leizer Nanas tells the story in the book, which is called Migdal Ois. He has his stories of the Rogatchover there, and they probably reprinted in his Sefer, the newer print, Ish Olei Nichna. But in the Sefer Migdal Ois, which came out in 1981, you have a whole section on the Rogatchover, and a significant number of stories in that section are from Leizer Nanas, who was well alive at that time when the book was published. Personal experiences. So he writes, they would knock on the door of the Rogatchover's apartment. The door would swing open. I'm sure it was a short little man. He came up to those people's chest with his hand in his torso, and he would very, very anxiously say, "What's the kash? What's the shaila? What's the question?" And then he would see the bachrim, and his whole demeanor would change. At mimim, kum tanai. He was very, very warm and generous with the tmimim. So he asked the Bachrim if they know what a Rebbe is. He asked them, the Rogatchover asked the Bachrim who knows what a Rebbe is. And of course, the Bachrim didn't need too much seichel to know that when the Rogatchover asks you what a Rebbe is, you shut up and listen. You let him tell you. So the Rogatchover asked them if they knew what a Rebbe was, and then when they didn't respond, he said, a Rebbe is a Yid that every night before Krishma Shalamita, he scans the entire globe, the entire world. And any place in the world where he sees that a Yid has a need, he tries to help. This was the Rogatchover's deadhead. The Rogatchover came to this deadhead not because he sat at Fabrengens and drank mashke. He came to this deadhead because he had the kind of brain that could understand the brain of a Rebbe and the role of a Rebbe based on his observation. In other words, this is an objective perspective rather than we would like to believe it's true perspective. The Rogatchover saw the Rebbe Rashab and then the Friedrich Rebbe, and he saw a Yid every day. He looks at every Jew on this planet to see what's going on with him and how he could possibly help. And that's the tide for That Moshe Rabbeinu wakes up the neshama of a Yid b'chol makom sheheim. And again, as the Maimer says it formally, it's Lozun Ulafanis as Yisrael Binyan Emunah. To the Emunah which we have from Avraham Avinu should get its Mazenis and its Parnasa from Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, that's the title of the Pasuk. Now, the Maimer goes on. Now, I have 15 minutes left, and I've been talking a lot on the first 3 points, which I don't regret, but it still does make it impossible for me to read everything on this piece of paper that I handed you, that I sent you. The Maimer goes on to describe a duality. The duality essentially is that the Friedrich Rebbe's idea is, the Friedrich Rebbe's idea is number Gimel. Our Rebbe's idea is number Hey. That makes a slight change in the original expression. If you have your text in front of you and you're comfortable with Hebrew, in Gimel it says Lozunu lefanis es Yisrael binyan emuna. In Hey it says Lozunu lefanis esho emuna atzma. Our Rebbe takes the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer and makes this modification. He changes. Instead of saying Zon lefanis es Yisrael binyan emuna, he says Zon lefanis esho emuna atzma. Because what the Rebbe does in this Maimer, in order to answer a bunch of questions, is to make the following argument: that every Rebbe has two roles, two functions, two different functions, two different roles. One is a pneumistic role, one is a hidden role, one is a subliminal spiritual role. And the other is a proactive, practical, actual role. Every Rebbe is doing two things. Something which none of us know about, none of us see, we just believe it because it's something that's happening spiritually. And another which is quite practical, everybody sees it and experiences it and knows it because they're around it, okay? What are the two roles of a Rebbe? The first, the subliminal role, what nobody sees, all the Rebbes share. From Moshe Rabbeinu until Moshe Rabbeinu of our generation, and all the Moshe Rabbeinos in between share this property, share this quality, share this function. What is it? This is number Hey on your sheet. Lazon ulefanes es emuna atzma, to feed and provide for the faith, parenthesis, soul itself. The way the Maimer explains it is that every Yid has what's called etzem, a yechida shebenefesh, and every Yid has a mazel or a chaya shebenefesh. And Moshe Rabbeinu, in every generation, touches the yechid, he touches the pintel yid. And the purpose of touching the pintel yid is to connect the yechida with the chaya, to connect what's called in this Maimer the etzem with mazel, the yechida with chaya. Why is it important to touch the yechida and move the yechida to touch, to come closer to chaya? The answer is because in order for Yid's emunah to be in a state of ure'ei emunah, and in order for Yid's emunah to be internalized, the emunah from chaya has to be fortified, has to be strengthened, has to get its power from yechida. So every Moshe Rabbeinu has the same role. Lazur ulefanes es emunah atzma. Emunah in this phrase means chaya, emunah on the level of chaya. he provides Bezenes Apanasa for the Emunah itself, means he connects the Emunah of Chaya with the Emunah of Yechida. So the Emunah should be Bepnimius. This role is a constant. In other words, from Moshe Rabbeinu till the Rebbe used to describe it in his letters, how the Friedrich Rebbe Koyachal was physically limited, and he was not mobile, and he couldn't get around, and he couldn't talk. Like sitzen bei sich in Zimmer und bei Gießen Tränen. The Rebbe, our Rebbe, said the Friedrich Rebbe would sit in his office, and he would read people's letters, and he would mention people's names, and he would cry. And in his crying, he was me'edeh rachem rabim for them. He was touching their neshama. This happened by Chadrei Chadorim. This happened in the privacy of the Rebbe's cheder, in the Friedrich Rebbe's room, and nobody but the Friedrich Rebbe himself was privy to this. This is an Indian pnimi, that in each generation, the Rebbe sits in his cheder, wherever he happens to be located on the planet, and he's me'ereh rachmim rabim for the neshamas of Yidden. He tries to do what he can to wake up Yiddish neshamas in a subliminal way. This is a constant. Every Rebbe shared that task, period. There's no difference between one Rebbe and another when it comes to this number, hey. Lozun ulafanes esho emunah. And the other role is leadership. A Rebbe is a leader. A Rebbe is not a tzaddik nistik. A Rebbe is the leader of the people. And as such, he's, min ha'har el ha'am, as Rashi says. Yeah? All he does, he goes from the mountain to the people, from the people to the mountain. His entire definition is to be a Mamut HaMachaber between Yidden and HaKadosh Baruch. Says the Rebbe, when it comes to the leadership role of a Rebbe, the Rebbe shepherds, the Rebbe leads based on the needs of the generation. In other words, the subliminal role of a Rebbe is a constant. It's always the same. The actual role of a Rebbe, the leadership role of a Rebbe, depends on the generation. And each Rebbe will provide leadership based on the circumstance of the people and what they need at that time, so to speak. Okay? So, our Maimed, V'ata Tezava, gives us three models of a Rebbe. Gives us three different human beings, or three different circumstances of human beings, who shepherded, who were leaders of the Jewish people. Each situation is different because the circumstance on the ground was different. The Rebbe doesn't lead the Rebbe based on the people based on who he is. He leads the people based on where the people are. Basher hu sham, or basher heim sham. So the Maimer, if we started the Maimer from the beginning to the end, you encounter three Rebbes who, again, the Pnimius Deka role is a constant. The Lozun Ulfanis Esho Emuna Atzma, which is, by the way, it's in Pedig Vav of the Maimer, is a constant. It never changes. Ikerin Yanayim Mehem, this Lozun Ulfanis Emuna Atzma, this is chapter 6 of the Maimer, is constant. But then you have Teitzos in Yanayim Mehem, the secondary role of it, which is actual leadership. And the Teitzos in Yanayim Mehem, the leadership role in every generation is different. And he gives three examples. Number one, Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu was a Rebbe. He was a leader of the Jewish people whose role it was to get them to come closer to the Eibusha. That was his role, to bring people closer to the Eibusha. But what kind of world did he live in? Did Moshe Rabbeinu live in? Moshe Rabbeinu shepherded a nation living literally and figuratively in clouds. They were enveloped by clouds. Food came from heaven. Water came from a rock. They didn't have to worry about clothes. They didn't have to worry about anything. As I'll say, Yidden were busy studying Torah. That's all they did. Their entire reality was godliness. They lived in a cloud. Everything about them was supernatural, miraculous, and Moshe was their Rebbe. Of course, you can scratch your head and say, what could a Rebbe possibly give a generation of Jewish people who are, for all intents and purposes, living in their neighborhood? So the Rebbe, and the Friedrich Rebbe says it, and the Rebbe before that also say it, Moshe Rabbeinu's Rebbeship, his role as a leader. In other words, if Moshe has two tasks, number one, the primary role of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he's on the Fathers as Amuna Atzma, he connects even to the Eibush and the subliminal level. And then there is Teitzos in Yerayim, his actual leadership. The actual leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu consisted, to use the Lashon HaPosek, of Laman Das. Moshe had Fabreinians. How often his Fabreinians were, we don't know. How long his Fabreinians lasted, we don't know that either, but he certainly sat with the people. What did he say to the people? What's going to happen if in 1 minute from now the clouds will disappear? What's going to happen if from 1 minute from now, the Mon and the Be'er Shemiyim are going to vanish? What's going to happen to your Yiddishkeit? And of course, what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to them is, as the as the famous expression is, are you a chassid or are the clouds a chassid? Is your whole identity as a Jew because you're enveloped by godliness, so there's no option? Like, it's almost like the equivalent 40 years of kafal leim har kigigas kind of thing, or is it you? And Moshe Fabrein with Chassidim, with Anash, with Yidden, and he inspired them to appreciate that they have to live in this cloud and ascertain, reach a madrege, where the relationship with the Eibishter was personal, not based on the environment. Those were the two roles of Moshe Rabbeinu Hagashmi. A, the spiritual role to try to touch the neshama of every Jew. B, the practical role, the leadership role to encourage people to develop das in a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the first model of Moshe Rabbeinu. Then the Maimon continues and says, the second model of Moshe Rabbeinu was Mordechai HaYehudi, Mordechai. Mordechai, the Medrash says, Mordechai b'deiri, Moshe b'deiri, that Mordechai has a special relationship or similarity to Moshe Rabbeinu. He wasn't the only Rebbe, but there's something very unique about the similarity between Mordechai HaYehudi and Moshe Rabbeinu. He was also a Rebbe, but he was a Rebbe in a very different time. Moshe Rabbeinu lived with the Jewish people in a cloud. Mordechai lived with the Jewish people on the very dark clouds. And the Zedek's clear. Haman wanted to kill every last one of them, Yehudim. And Mordechai was their shepherd. Mordechai was their Rebbe. Mordechai was their Nasi. So like Moshe Rabbeinu, we had two tasks. And again, the Hebrew for this is Ikir in Yinayim Mehemna and Teitos in Yinayim. Ikir in Yinayim Mehemna, Mordechai HaYehudi, was to touch the soul of a Jew and wake it up. This is a subliminal process which a Rebbe does. We don't even know about it. Teitos in Yinayim Mehemna, what did Mordechai do? As a leader, he woke Yidden up for the Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. He got the Jewish people ready. Lim ser nafshem al kedushas Hashem, like we say in the Barach. And he was incredibly effective. The Rebbe brings in Teda Eid, also behem machshavas chutz chas v'sholom for 11 months. 11 months. The Jewish people waited for, quote, that day, end quote, vayemahu, lemazeh. And until the day actually came, nobody knew what was going to happen. And the Alter Rebbe's expression is also behem machshavas chutz chas v'sholom. Not one Jew for one moment thought maybe he should run away, change his identity, stop being a Yehudi, and instead adopt the title Ivri. I don't have time to explain this, but it's Agan and Parsha that the Haman was killing Yehudim, not Ivri. And the Yehudim stood steadfast in loyalty to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they would not give up. So Mordechai also has two jobs. Ikir in Yinayim Mehemna and Teitos in Yinayim Mehemna. Ikir in Yinayim Mehemna is the same as Moshe Rabbeinu, Zon and Mufana, just Emunah Atzma. It's a subliminal in you to sit in his cheder and think about Yidden Mochamokim Shehemet B'Me'edet and Neshama. Teitos in Yinayim Mehemna was very different than Moshe Rabbeinu. In the times of Mordechai Yehudi, there was a need for Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem, and Mordechai rallied the Yidden for them saying Nafshem al Kiddush Hashem. That's the second model of Moshe Rabbeinu in our mind. And then the Rebbe says that this is the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe filled this role. First of all, he says the Frierdiker Rebbe is similar to Mordechai HaYehudi because he was the Rebbe over the entire generation, not just a segment of the people. And second of all, in what was the expression of his Rebbeship, so to speak, to Me'edah B'Yidin Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. And then the Rebbe continues and said, there's a third model. Who is the third model? The third model is the same Mordechai we just spoke about before, Mordechai HaTzadik, Mordechai HaYehudi, but after the Nes happened. They wrote these notes, Yud Gimel Nis. They sent out second notes, Chav Gimel Siv, which was just a few days ago. And then came Yud Gimel Adar the following year, and of course most Goyim stayed home. The Agogites came out to fight. The Jews were able to deal with them, and they killed tens of thousands of people from Amalek. And Yidden had a new Yom Tov. Yeah, Yidden went from the lowest ebb to the highest ebb in 24 hours. Bigness. Says Rebbe, what happened after that? Mordechai was still the Rebbe. Mordechai was still the Rebbe. Mordechai was still the Rebbe. And the Gezeirim was passed. No. The idea that for a whole year, for a virtual year, Yidden stood facing literally the sword, even Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. and that Mordechai wanted to keep them focused. Hachono l'tzlan hoya lo yisiyah, to be prepared l'kad Hashem Shemayim Barabim. It's past, gone, like a bad dream. What happened now? The Rebbe says Mordechai continued doing his dual role, but it changed. It changed. How did it change? The previous role is a constant, like I said to you before. And again, the Hebrew expression is never changes. That Mordechai, after the Nes, his role was to sit by Zich and Cheder and to think about Yid Mechol Katzvi table, Jews all over the corners of the world, and to be the Rachman for them, a Neshama role. Then there's his leadership. What's his leadership? His leadership constituted two words, Admaseh. Mordechai sat with the Jewish people and said, please do not celebrate Golus as Giyum. Yes, Hashem made a great Nes. We survived Haman. But Akata Adad Achashverosh Hana. We're still in Golus. We're servants of Achashverosh. And as the Maimer explains it, there's a there's a lack of Gilui Elokus, God that is not revealed sufficiently. And Gilui Elokus Negela Etzem Yusei. I'm reading words from item Zayin. That God be revealed in the whole world completely touches the very essence of every Jew, and therefore Golus is no good. So Mordechai lived through a categorical change in the condition of the Jewish people, and as such, he went through an evolution in his role as Moshe Rabbeinu. Before the Nes happened, his pneumistic role was Lozun Lefanes Esamuna Atzma, and his practical role was to be Me'er Yid from Seiris Nefesh HaKiddush Hashem. After the Gezerah was passed, his pneumistic role remained the same. Lozun Lefanes Esamuna Atzma. This doesn't change from generation to generation, from Rebbe to Rebbe, etc., etc., etc. But his leadership changed. Mordechai's Farbrengens were about getting out of Golus. Mordechai's Farbrengens were about not making the terrible mistake of sitting in Golus and saying it's Geula, because, like the Rebbe once said in the Farbrengen, I have a new Cadillac. It's not Geula because our lives are no longer at risk, but you just don't want Mashiach. And this is the third model of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he sits with Yidden in Golus, but it's what we call in our culture a Golus of Ashiras, and perhaps even a Golus of Ashiras Beruchnias, with Kol Tu. And Mordechai's role is to make a Yid wake up to the fact that Golus is terrible. You can have lots of money, and lots of Torah, and lots of kavod, and lots of kids, and a lot of Yiddish Shemaim, and lots of all wonderful things. If a person becomes accepting that situation, it's a Golus, B'tech Golus. It's bad enough to be in Golus. It's altogether terrible when you look at the Golus and you think it's Giyul. The Rebbe, I heard was a tape from the Rebbe where the Rebbe said, "Em is a spite of there, and du schreist Gishmei Brach," and someone's spitting at you, and you're calling them Gishmei Brach. You just sit in Golus, where all the brachas are beheld. But it's Golus, and he's calling it Giyul is a especially dark Golus. This is the third model of Moshe Rabbeinu in our Maimer, that, again, the pneumistic role is the constant, Lozun, Lefanis, Es, Muna Atzma. The Chitania's role is distinctive, it changes. And in this last Moshe Rabbeinu model, the Chitania's role is to make Yidden scream at Moshe, to make Yidden desperately, really, really want Mashiach. And of course, as the Rebbe spoke so many times, that the coming of Mashiach depends on our desiring him and our asking him for Mashiach. Okay? That's the third model. And that's the Maimer. Yeah. ואתה, תצוה starts off as one and it becomes two jobs. And in this Maimer, the Rebbe gives us three models. Moshe, Mordechai in the worst of times, which is an allusion to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and Mordechai in the best of times, but in Golus, which the Rebbe says almost explicitly, is an allusion to us. Here the Rebbe says something fantastic. And this Rabboisai is what we have to hear. In other words, everything I said until now, and I've already used up my hour, is all preliminary. At the very end of the Maimer, in Perek Yud, the Perek Yud Aleph, the Rebbe, so to speak, gets to the point. He says, "I'm moidin dekavot," and I don't have time to explain it comprehensively, but I do have time to tell you the nekuda. He says, we talk about a Rebbe. We talk about a Rebbe in every generation. And that the Rebbe in every generation, on the one hand, has the same exact job as any other Rebbe. On the other hand, no two Rebbes have an identical task. Could they respond to the needs on the ground? And therefore you have several different models, misholim for what the Rebbe is. Because the Rebbe, when it comes to the last Rebbe, whose role it is to be with Yidden and a goals of Ashidus, and to be made in them a desire for the Gula, Mitzvah Shlema, there's another condition. This condition is very deep. That condition is called V'yikchu Elach. V'yikchu Elach means they should bring to Moshe Rabbeinu the Shemen. The Rebbe titles V'yikchu Elach that Yidden should bring themselves to Moshe Rabbeinu. We should bring ourselves to Moshe Rabbeinu to the Nesiyada. In other words, Rabbi Yossi, in order for V'yata Tetzava to happen, in a goal of Ashirus, it's not enough for the Rebbe to be me'eded our neshama. We have to give, in the Lashon of the Maimonides, our kechas ha'yeluyim have to become chadim ha'atzvos. We have to give the Eibishter ourselves, the Rebbe, ourselves, which means we have to be his partners. And the Rebbe says almost unequivocally, or maybe absolutely, totally explicitly, that there's no v'yichoi lachav, it fell l'v'yata tetzava. If Yidden do not give of themselves to Moshe Rabbeinu to become his shutzim, to become his partners, there is something lacking in the V'yata Tetzava itself. In other words, it's as if you were to say that a Rebbe, there's something a Rebbe can't do. A Rebbe can help a Yid to have a moon of the Eibishter. A Rebbe can help a Yid go and say, it's Nefesh HaKiddush Hashem. But a Rebbe cannot help a Yid want Mashiach so much that it makes him sick, unless that Yid donates himself to the Rebbe's activities. That's the pasuk. V'yata Tetzava's Bnei Yisrael, v'yichchu elech. That in order for the Yata Tetzava to happen in the highest Madrei, which is the third Moshe Rabbeinu, it's the times of Golus, and life is good, and the role of Moshe Rabbeinu is to be made in nothing for a desire for Mashiach and a disdain, a hate, an intolerance for Golus, because Kosses Lamar, it is in God's intention. For the Rufus Gilead Lakus is not B'chol Mokem B'Shaveh. The way a Yid, like you and me, can have a need or a desire or a want for Mashiach, the way the Rebbe wants us to have that desire. And as the Rebbe said, wanting Mashiach as a prerequisite, as a precondition to Mashiach actually coming, is only possible in one way, V'yikchu Elach. V'yikchu Elach, I mean, you learn the Maimed explains everything very technically and very exactly, but to be basic, V'yikchu Elach means shlichus. Yata Tetzava Bnei Yisrael Moshe Rabbeinu's inyan keeps the Meibishter, and on the highest level, that depends on the Yichchu Elach. For Moshe Rabbeinu to connect to the Eibishter to such a high level, where the Kechas HaGilui Nasim Chadim HaAtzos. It's not Kemei David as Kechas HaGilui. And so on and so forth. If you learn the Ma'am, you know what I'm talking about. It's only when the Yidden are shut with Moshe Rabbeinu, Yichchu Elach. In other words, the Ma'am finishes with the ultimate Chabad message. What's the Chabad message? Men darf sich nicht verlassen auf ein Rebbe, men darf allein tun. Which means in English that everything that we have comes from the Rebbe. But in order for the Rebbe to give it to us, and more important, in order for what the Rebbe to give us, to reach us, we have to give ourselves. And this Rabbi Yossi is Gimel Tammuz. V'yikchu Elach. Yata Tetzava, Moshe Rabbeinu connects him to the Meibishter. Every Rebbe, every Nosei B'Yisrael. It's very important. But what this Maimon is teaching is that the prerequisite, or the requisite for the ultimate fulfillment of the V'yata Tetzava is the V'yikchu Elach. And I've given members to Moshe Rabbeinu. I had Thursday night on Zoom that was attended by approximately one person. I forgot what I wanted to say. I'm kind of tired. I want to say something about this. Yeah, the Gemara says, "Labani Anisa," right? The Rabbeinu says, "I need my children." The culmination of this Maimon, if it'll come to me in a minute, I'll tell you what I said. V'yata Tetzava, Moshe Rabbeinu's role is to connect Yid to Atzmas Ein Sof. It depends on the V'yikchu Elach. A chassid gives of. Oh, this is what I said. I had this Fabrengen with this Heverman on the phone, so I said to him that there are two distinct things in Yiddish. It's Zayin Epis and Ton Epis. To be somebody and to do something. They're very, very different. Zayin Epis is in Lashon Hatanya Hashem Ateh. To be somebody means that you've achieved the status of Avodas Hashem, where your whole identity is transformed. Tonepis, to do something is a moment by moment thing. Today I can do a good deed, tomorrow I can do a good deed. Yesterday I could have done a good deed and so forth. So I shared with this younger man, and you don't have to agree with my Taylor. This is what I told him. I said, you know, in the olden days, the goal of a chassid was to zayin epis. In our generation, you don't want to say it's enough, but it's unfortunately more than enough. And that's tonepis. With zayin epis, it will become an epis, you know, a chassid who sleeps differently than other people, who eats different than other people. That's a high madrig. A beton epis, as Lubavitcher Hasidim, to say that we have in our lives of what we give of ourselves to the Rebbe, whether it's Nefzayim or it's the Shiurim and so on and so forth, that through that Yikwelech, there's the enhancement of the Yata Tetzav and Moshe Rabbeinu connecting us to the Eibishter, to the extent that we literally desire Mashiach. Not only the Rebbe says desire Mashiach because he told us to, but this is how we actually want to feel. This is the Maimon Rebbe. When you have Yata Tetzav, and the V'yata Tetzav is an eighth of Yichur Elech, a Yidden partner with the Eibishter, this is the ultimate Moshe Rabbeinu. And of course, the Maimon finishes, and that's the difference between Tamid and Me'erev Adbeikit, right? This is point Yud Beis in your page. If Moshe Rabbeinu is Mo'oider Yidden Yun Alaharim, if Moshe Rabbeinu was Makashir and Mechaber et Yisrael and himself, Zon and Mefanes et Yisrael Binyan Amunah, Zon and Mefanes Esro Amunah Atzma. If Moshe Rabbeinu doing the work himself, it's Me'erev Adbeikit. He's able to inspire Yidden because it's dark. When the sun begins to shine, his ability to influence the people or his necessity as a leader wanes. But if the V'yata Tetzaveh has a V'yichor Elech, there's a partnering with the V'yata Tetzaveh. And Yederene Kendas, the Rebbe gave so many, and the Rebbe gives so many different means through which every Yid who so desires can express his discussions with Neibishnu. That becomes the medium for V'yata Tetzaveh, and a madrege that's called Tamid. The sun is shining, and nevertheless, there's a need for V'yata Tetzaveh. I heard from a young man, he told me it himself. That he was learning in Far Chabad, and he made a Hachono of them. So he came to his mashpia was Rebbe Mendel for Tashas. He said to Rebbe Mendel, which one should I undertake? 3 prakim a day, 1 perek a day, or Sefer HaMitzvahs. Rebbe Mendel told him to do all 3. But 3 prakim a day, 1 perek a day. So he told Rebbe Mendel for the fast, but the Rebbe never made such takana. Rebbe Mendel answered him cryptically, 3 Wege, wie man kann sich verbinden mit Neibishter. 3 different means by which you can connect yourself to Atzmas Ein Sof. That's what Miftzayim is, that's what Chitas is, and Rambam is, and Mashiach is, and whatever you want. All the Inyanim of the Rebbe are tools for the Vayikhu Elecha, what we give in our relationship with the Rebbe, and they're a medium, they're the fertile earth to enhance and to strengthen the Inyan of V'yata Tetzaveh. Okay, this is my shiur, if you will. I want to thank you all for joining, and I also want to encourage all of you to visit my website, insidechassidus.org. There's an awful lot of classes there, and I would love to gain new adherents, new talmidim. That's my V'yichur Elecha. Insidechassidus.org is, so if you go to my website, so then maybe I'll be a little bit more chassid, because there'll be more V'yichur Elecha, V'yata Tetzaveh. And I want to say this, Rebbe should bless us all, Kedem Kol. Those are 2 greatness of Gimel Tammuz, it was always in the Tag, we shouldn't waste it. And Rashem is Rebbe soll heilen uns allen, und jeder von ihnen uns besonder, aber soll sicher sein, sie sehen sich mit der Rebbe. Und der Rebbe soll sich reißen von den bitteren Kost, die wohl amit es Bashleima, mit der Simcha, mit der Chayes, mit der Bries. Like the Rebbe says, no Jew will be left behind. It should be now. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Okay. I don't know what's supposed to happen now, but my speech is finished.
I don't think we can hear you, Aaron. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you very much, Rabbi Paltiel. It was a real honor and a pleasure to have you. I must also thank Rabbi Aaron for hosting a few of these shiurim. So thank you very, very much. I really immensely appreciate it. I think we've learned a lot over the past 7 weeks, and I think we are ready to V'yichur Elecha, to give a part of us to the Rebbe over Gimel Tammuz. So thank you everybody for joining. Please make sure that everybody joins on Thursday night. There is a Farbrengen with Chase Taub and Noam Wagner Thursday night. The details will be sent around, so please join in. And wishing everybody a guten chodesh and alle brachas. Thank you everybody for joining, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
You are Mashiach now.
Cool.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Paltiel. Yes, okay.
Look at that. Nice to see you all. I see my cousins. Shevet Fadem Alein. Shalom Aleichem, all the Paltiels down under. Whatever your name is, but the Paltiel genes. Okay. Yisrael, nice to see you. Mazel tov again.
I just put myself on for the last minute.
Pardon me?
I just put my face on for the last minute, just so you can see.
Yes, Yashikeach. And I see Isser's here too.
Waking up so early.
Zaitali Absurdus Tavis. Regards to all of our friends and family.
Thank you.
All 2 of 7.